Chapter 1535. Yes, it's me. Why are you here? Were you the ones who helped me just now? Jingyu was also very surprised. She did not expect to meet Xiao Wenshi and the others here. Her heart was filled with excitement. We also did not expect that we would meet Master and the Ninth Emperors when we helped. Xiao Wenshi and the others scratched their heads and laughed. What a coincidence! Jingyu's heart was filled with emotions. However, looking at the Ninth Emperors and the others, even if we did not help, Master would still be safe and sound. Xiao Wenshi said as he turned his head to look at the people around him. His gaze fell on Xing Yi and the group of guards. These guards had just displayed martial arts. Which one of them was ordinary? What are you talking about, big brother Xiao? If it weren't for the help of my brothers, Little Potato would have been scared to death, said Jingyu with a deep sigh as she looked at the child in her arms with pity. Little Potato. When Xiao Wenshi heard Jingyu's words, his eyes suddenly widened. His gaze fell on Jingyu's arms. This is Master's child? It's the little young master? Mao Yi's face was also filled with surprise. Without thinking, he cried out in surprise. Xiao Wenshi suddenly coughed and glared at Mao Yi. What are you saying? Yes, this is mine, Xiao Chen's child. His name is Xiao Xin, and his nickname is Little Potato. Jingyu said faintly with a smile. Xiao Xin, what a good name. Xiao Wenshi's eyes were filled with emotion. This is not the place to talk. Let's go to the open space in front. Xiao Chen looked at the guards who were cleaning up the corpses and lowered his head slightly to look at Jingyu. Okay. Jingyu and the others nodded and escorted Jingyu to the open space. After sitting down on a rock, they began to talk. Jingyu's gaze fell on the escort carriage that was parked at the side. Her eyes were tinged with a faint trace of doubt. Big brothers, did you pass by here because you were escorting the escort? Jingyu raised her head slightly and asked Xiao Wenshi and the others. Yes, we've been escorting the escort agency ever since we parted ways with the boss. Xiao Wenshi said slowly. We did not expect that after Master returned to Tokyo, something like that would happen. By the time we rushed back to Tokyo, it was too late. That's right. Du Peng, who was standing at the side, said, when we rushed back to Dongqing, the restaurant and some of the businesses of the boss were suppressed. My brothers and I were able to get Uncle Shun and Lu Man out. However, we don't know where they went after that. Yes, at that time, the Demon Empress was in charge of the Tokyo Imperial City. Master's businesses were all destroyed. Uncle Shun and Lu Man were suppressed and almost lost their lives. Xiao Wenshi frowned slightly and said, now that Tokyo has recovered, Uncle Shun should have gone back. Those people are really too infuriating. Mao, he said angrily. Master, later we heard that you went to Roman Forest. We originally wanted to support Master, but when we wanted to go, we found that all the roads were blocked. We had no choice but to return to Northern Pastoral. Mao Yi said with a sullen expression. Jingyu sighed deeply when she heard this. She almost knew what Xiao Wenshi and the others had experienced. Chapter 1536. Big Brother said that even if we went to help Boss, we would only be sending ourselves to our deaths, Du Peng slowly said. After that, we returned to the Northern Pastoral and continued to develop our escort agency. We thought that if Boss came to the Northern Pastoral, us brothers would be able to protect Boss. Big Brothers, thank you for your hard work. Jingyu sighed deeply and said, it's a good thing that you didn't go to the Roman Forest. If you did, I wouldn't have been able to protect your lives. It's great to see that all of you are fine. Back then, it was so difficult and I was so worried. I was afraid that you would be hunted down because of me. Now that I see that all of you are fine, I am relieved. Jingyu sighed deeply and said, we should be the ones saying that. Xiao Wenshi looked at Jingyu and sighed helplessly. Boss has done so much for us, yet we couldn't do anything for Boss. We are really sorry. Don't say that. I'm already satisfied that all of you are doing well, Jingyu said with a faint smile in her eyes. Boss is still so kind. Mao, he said emotionally when he heard Jingyu's words. Fourth brother Mao is still so honest. Jingyu was slightly taken aback when she heard that. Then, she burst out laughing. Ha ha! Everyone laughed when they saw Jingyu laugh. They sat down on the simple rock and talked about what they had been doing for the past few years. Xiao Wenshi and the others had been trying their best to find out news about Jingyu. However, they didn't have the ability of the 9 emperors. Every time they heard news, it was something that had happened a long time ago. Everyone sat on the rock and listened to Jingyu talk about the past. They didn't know why, but their hearts were filled with sadness. Even though Jingyu made it sound so simple, how could they not know what she had gone through? On the other hand, the other people from the escort agency who were guarding the goods were still immersed in deep shock. It seemed that they had yet to realize what was going on. Why were they originally just a few ordinary martial artists? But now, they were talking to the 9 emperors and the empress of other pupils. And the empress of other pupils was calling these people brothers. These people were completely dumbfounded. They thought that they had saved someone, but they didn't expect that the people they had casually saved were the empress of other pupils and the 9 emperors. How could they know the names of these 2 people? They even knew what the young miss of this family was, of course, they who often roamed the underworld. Boss, are you going to the Northern Shepherd's royal city? Xiao Wenshi asked Jingyu and Xiao Chun after a long conversation. Yes. Jingyu nodded slowly and said, the Tokyo Empress, Lu Miaoqiu, is my good sister. However, Miaoqiu disappeared a few months ago. The relationship is a little complicated. I can't explain it to you in a short time. What? The Empress disappeared? Xiao Wenshi and the others widened their eyes in shock when they heard Jingyu's words. Yes. Jingyu frowned and nodded slowly. She said, I came here today from Miaoqiu. Do you have any news? Chapter 1537. Isn't the Empress in the Tokyo Palace? How'd she go missing? I heard that the Empress was disfigured by the fire, so she didn't appear. But the Emperor said that the Empress was in the palace, so how did she? Xiao Wenshi looked at Jingyu with confusion. That's just a cover. Jingyu shook her head helplessly and said, Lu Miaoqiu ran away from the fire and came to live in the Northern Pastoral Palace. She had been living here peacefully, but a few months ago, she suddenly went missing. See, Xiao Wenshi and the others widened their eyes in shock when they heard Jingyu's words. Aya, so she really is the Tokyo Empress. Mao, he suddenly clapped his hands and spoke while everyone's expression was solemn. His eyes were filled with astonishment. Fourth brother Mao, do you know something? Jingyu's eyes widened in surprise when she heard Mao Yi's words. Big brother, do you remember the last time we came to the palace as escorts? When we were about to enter the city, I suddenly had to pee and went into the forest. It was then that I heard someone talking in the forest. Mao, he scratched his head awkwardly and said, At the time, I was in a hurry to pee, so I didn't pay attention. When I came back, I glanced at the forest. The people in the forest seemed to be arguing. Then, I saw a girl being knocked out and taken away. I only glanced at her face. At that time, I was in a trance and thought that it was the Empress. But on second thought, the Empress should be in the Dongqing Imperial Palace. How could she be here? So, I didn't think much of it. Now that you mention it, could it really be the Empress? Mao, he swallowed his saliva silently and asked with widened eyes. You really saw her? Did you hear what they were saying? Jingyu's eyes were filled with excitement as she asked. No. Mao, he scratched his head awkwardly and said, It was getting dark and I was in a hurry, so I didn't listen carefully. But I heard that the speaker's accent wasn't Northern Pastoral or Tokyo. If it's not Northern Pastoral or Tokyo, then... Jingyu suddenly stood up. Her expression changed. She seemed to have thought of something, and her whole body started to tremble. I know. Jingyu's eyes were filled with excitement. She turned to look at Xiao Chun and said, I finally know why it was so strange. We were so focused on the Holy Family and the poison sect that we forgot about one more person. Sibu, Wei and Xiao Chun said slowly. Yes. Jingyu took a deep breath, nodded and said, Back then in the great Shiwu Empire, they didn't kill Wei Yan when they left. This incident must have been planned by Wei Yan. Xiao Chen's expression fell silent. We have no choice but to tell His Majesty about this. Xiao Chun turned to look at Jingyu with a grave expression. Yes. Jingyu's expression was also extremely ugly. She turned to Xiao Chun and said, If I remember correctly, Wei Ling has already ascended the throne. Why is Wei Yin still so arrogant? Or is Wei Ling also involved in Miaoqiu's matter? Jingyu frowned and turned to Xiao Chun to ask. Chapter 1538. I don't understand this either. Xiao Chun slowly shook his head and said, Wei Ling isn't an unreasonable person, but I don't know what's going on in this situation. What's going on? Master, Xing Er sent a letter. While Jingyu and Xiao Chan were talking, Xiao Wenshi and the others had serious expressions on their faces. When they heard Xing Yi's voice, everyone looked over. Give it to me. Xiao Chan slowly unrolled the letter in Xing Yi's hand. The contents were what Shangwan Linglan and Xing Er had found. The contents of the letter were extremely clear. Xiao Chun and Jing Yu's guess was correct. The one behind all of this was the Cebu's Crown Prince Wei, and Shangwan Linglan and Xing Er had already rushed over to meet up with Xiao Chen's group. After reading the contents of the letter, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's faces instantly turned gloomy. Wei Yin, you must be tired of living. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with viciousness. Xiao Chan was silent for a moment, then suddenly turned to look at Xing Yi and said, Xing Yi, pass this news to the emperor. Let's reorganize and head to the Cebu border. Yes. Xing Yi bowed and hurriedly went to carry out the order. Brothers, we might have to part ways here. Jing Yu turned to look at Xiao Wenshi and the others. Her eyes were filled with seriousness as she said, This matter is of great importance. I can't delay. Boss, we understand. Everyone nodded and said, If boss needs any help from us brothers, we will definitely help. I'm relieved that all of you are doing well. Jing Yu slowly smiled and said, When this matter is resolved, we will definitely have a good chat. Today, I will bid farewell to all of you. Okay. Xiao Wenshi nodded deeply. After everyone spoke, Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's group sat in the carriage. This gathering was so rushed that they had to part again in just a short time. However, Xiao Wenshi and the others understood very well. The next time they would meet again would not be far away. They watched as the carriage left and took a deep breath. Their hearts were filled with nostalgia. After Jing Yu and Xiao Chun left, they still had to continue with the escort. Xiao Wenshi turned his head slightly to look at the brothers beside him. When they looked at each other, it was as if they had made up their mind about something. They were so resolute. Let's go, Xiao Wenshi shouted, and called everyone to walk towards the main road ahead. Jing Yu, who was sitting in the carriage, slowly retracted her gaze. Every time they parted, Jing Yu would feel bitter in her heart. However, now that she saw that Xiao Wenshi and her brothers were safe and sound, Jing Yu felt relieved. Let's go first. Will Linglan and Xing Er be able to catch up? Jing Yu pursed her lips and asked Xiao Chun, who was carrying a child. Yes, follow me. Xiao Chun responded softly and said, You've worked hard. Take a rest first. Okay. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with fatigue. She nodded at Xiao Chun and lay down on the soft couch in the carriage and closed her eyes. Not long after Jing Yu fell asleep, Little Potato, who was in Xiao Chun's arms, woke up. He opened his big round eyes and stared at Xiao Chun with his pitch-black eyes. His gaze seemed to be filled with curiosity. Xiao Chun looked at his son and frowned slightly. Such a small fellow. Chapter 1539. How long would it take for him to grow up? Xiao Chun was very curious about this question. He stared at Little Potato and thought about it seriously. The more he thought about it, the deeper his frown became. The little guy, who was originally very quiet in Xiao Chen's arms, was now looking at Xiao Chun with a frown. It was as if Little Potato was angry at itself. Suddenly, it pursed its lips and was about to cry. Xiao Chun looked at the little guy and panicked. Without thinking, he reached out and covered Little Potato's mouth. Then, he turned to look at Jing Yu. Little brat, your mother just fell asleep. Don't cry. Xiao Chun stared at Little Potato and said. Of course, Little Potato couldn't speak. However, after hearing Xiao Chen's words, it twisted its body and reached out to grab Xiao Chen's finger. It seemed to be very interesting and curious. Xiao Chun was slightly stunned. Feeling the little guy's soft touch, he was a little stunned. He didn't know what Little Potato wanted to do. However, in the next second, he knew, because Little Potato stared at Xiao Chen's hand for a long time. Then it opened its mouth and sucked on it. Xiao Chen's face immediately darkened. Seeing this little guy's actions, Xiao Chun wanted to pull his hand out without thinking. However, just as he pulled his hand out, little potato pouted and was about to cry again. Xiao Chun quickly reached out and covered little potato's mouth again. Turning to look at the sweet Jingyu, Xiao Chun sighed deeply. He could only let this little guy eat his hand. Otherwise, Jingyu would definitely be woken up by her crying. Jingyu slept for a long time. When she woke up, the sky was already completely dark. The carriage that was originally moving had successfully stopped. Jingyu opened her somewhat confused eyes and turned her head to look, only to see a very warm scene. In this small carriage, Xiao Chun carefully protected the little guy in his arms. That little guy was incomparably sweet in Xiao Chen's arms. It was unknown what it saw in its dream. At this moment, it was hugging Xiao Chen's hand and eating. Even though Xiao Chun was asleep, he still protected little potato well. When Jingyu saw this scene, she instantly felt her entire heart soften. Looking at Xiao Chun and little potato, one adult and one child, her eyes were filled with tenderness. Jingyu carefully moved her body and leaned over to kiss little potato's face. She slightly raised her head and kissed Xiao Chen's face. The corners of her mouth hooked up into a bright and beautiful smile. It was not bad to spend the night in the forest. When Xiao Chen woke up, Xing Yi and the others had already roasted the meat. Jingyu fed little potato in the carriage before coming out to eat. Little potato was very mischievous in Jingyu's arms. It seemed to be very curious about the lit bonfire. It kept reaching out to grab the fire. Jingyu had no choice but to pick up a leaf on the ground and let this little guy play with it. Little potato took the leaf and looked at it curiously. He seriously played with it. When Jingyu saw that little potato was quiet, she could finally eat the food in her hands. She had to fill her stomach so that she could properly serve this little ancestor. They walked and stopped along the way. If it were only Jingyu and Xiao Chun, they would have arrived long ago. However, they had to take care of the little guy in their arms. Naturally, they slowed down their pace. Chapter 1540. Jingyu and Xiao Chun walked and stopped. When they reached the border of Tokyo, they successfully met up with Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er. They were going to meet up in Dongxi City. Xiao Chun and Jingyu were resting in the city. Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er arrived. Jingyu, let me see little potato. The moment Shangguan Linglan saw Jingyu, he wanted to see her child. Jingyu didn't say anything, but Shangguan Linglan couldn't wait to reach out and carry the child. Ayaya, little potato is so cute. Shangguan Linglan's eyes were filled with love. He was still a little nervous as he carried the little child. Xing Er also couldn't wait to come over. He wanted to see what the little master looked like. He was slightly stunned. He was so small. His little head wasn't even as big as his fist. Xing Er silently lowered his head and looked at his fist. When he looked at the little master again, he was suddenly at a loss. How was he going to protect such a small person? Jingyu, why did you name him Little Potato? Shangguan Linglan stared at Jingyu, his eyes full of dissatisfaction as he said, such a cute little fellow. He should be called Little Glutinous Dumpling. Shangguan Linglan, if you like him so much, why don't you have one yourself? If you have one yourself, he'll be called Little Glutinous Dumpling. He can be Little Potato's companion. Jingyu said calmly as she sat at the table and poured herself a cup of tea. As she spoke, she looked at Xing Er happily. The look in her eyes made Shangguan Linglan's cheeks turn red. Xing Er was slightly taken aback when he heard this. He actually thought about it very seriously. What nonsense are you saying? Shangguan Linglan blushed and glared at Jingyu. She hugged Little Potato and sat down on the side. She smiled and said to Xiao Tado, Little guy, look at me. I'm your Aunt Lon, remember? You have to call me Aunt Lon when you see me in the future, okay? Shangguan Linglan said with a smile as she poked the little fellow's cheek. Little Potato, you have to talk. If you want to call me Mom, why call me Aunt? Jingyu said with a glare when she heard Shangguan Linglan's words. Go away. I'm talking to Little Potato. I'm not talking to you. Shangguan Linglan glared at Jingyu and said unhappily. She looked as if she didn't want to talk to Jingyu. Jingyu lowered her head helplessly. Was this woman here to snatch her son away? Xing Er, did your journey go smoothly? While Jing Yu and Shangwan Linglan were talking, Xiao Chun and Xing Er were also talking. Replying to Master, "We didn't encounter any trouble on the way," Xing Er said with a bow. "That's good." Xiao Chun nodded slowly and said, "The Emperor must have received the news by now." Xing E, pay attention to the movements in the Imperial City. If I'm not wrong, the Emperor is going to send troops to Cebu. Send troops? Jing Yu heard this and turned her head with a puzzled expression. She looked at Xiao Chun and said, "Based on Xiao Yuling's personality, he just ascended the throne. Why would he send troops? Isn't he talking about a stable principle?" You're underestimating the Emperor." Xiao Chun pursed his lips and said, "Xiao Yuling looks like he's prepared for everything. However, if he's really angered, we might see Cebu being destroyed." Chapter 1541. He doesn't need our help. Xiao Yuling can definitely use all of his schemes and military strength to drag the Cebu to death. Xiao Chun slowly said, "However, I have never seen Xiao Yuling angry." "Is that so?" Jing Yu slightly raised her eyebrows, a faint trace of doubt in her eyes. "Yes." Xiao Chun slowly nodded and said, "When the Crown Prince and the Second Prince fought, Xiao Yuling was forced into a dead end countless times. However, he didn't do anything. Actually, I'm very curious. What kind of thing could make Xiao Yuling go crazy?" "Eh." Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chun in surprise. As expected of a family, even their temperaments are the same. Shangwan Linglan, who was playing with Little Potato, suddenly turned his head and looked at Xiao Chun. He said, "Ninth Emperors, weren't you the same as His Majesty back then?" When Shangwan Linglan's words fell, Jing Yu immediately laughed out loud. When Shangwan Linglan said that, it seemed to be true. When Xiao Chun heard Shangwan Linglan's words, he silently fell silent. "Then this time, should we go and help?" Jing Yu blinked and looked at Xiao Chun. "Yes." Xiao Chun slowly nodded and said, "I am the 9th Emperors of the Tokyo. This matter must be handled. Moreover, it would be easy for the Cebu to destroy the country. However, the Empress is in their hands. We cannot act recklessly." "Yes." Jing Yu's expression changed when she heard this. She said with a heavy expression, "That damned Wei-in. He actually dared to touch my people. He must be tired of living. If the Cebu uses Miaoqiu as a hostage, then it will be troublesome." "Yes." Xiao Chun nodded slowly and said, "That's why we have to go." Hey. Shangwan Linglan frowned when he heard the conversation between Xiao Chun and Jing Yu. He was at a loss as he said, "So you guys have come to an agreement. What are you going to do with Little Potato?" "Of course," Jing Yu said casually. "Jing Yu, are you kidding me?" Shangwan Linglan stared at Jing Yu in shock. "You're bringing such a young child to the battlefield. What if she got hurt? What if she fell sick? What kind of mother are you?" Jing Yu looked at the child in Shangwan Linglan's arms. She pursed her lips and said, "Who asked him to be reincarnated in my stomach? Since he was reincarnated in my stomach, then he's destined to not live a peaceful life." Jing Yu said with a deep look in her eyes, "If we're talking about danger, then no matter where I bring him, there will be danger. There are too many people who want my life. Xiao Chun and I can't guarantee our own safety. We can only protect this child with our lives. I only hope that he can grow up safely." Jing Yu sighed deeply. Shangwan Linglan was slightly stunned by her words. Yes, ever since Jing Yu was pregnant, she had never been safe. Now that the child was born, it was the same. Those malignant tumors had not been removed. Jing Yu and Xiao Chun could not live a peaceful life. This child could not be said to be safe either. Perhaps it was a good thing to bring him to the battlefield. Shangwan Linglan sighed deeply. His eyes were full of pity as he looked at the child. The little guy in Shangwan Linglan's arms smiled happily when he saw Shangwan Linglan's expression. His small mouth cracked open, causing Shangwan Linglan to smile as well. Chapter 1542. So cute, Shangwan Linglan said as he played with the little guy happily. Jing Yu and Shangwan Linglan met up. The next step was to go to the border of Cebu. Xing Yi and Xiao Bai also passed the news to the troops in Yangzhou City. They asked Jing Lang to lead the troops to the border of Cebu. Xiao Chen was right. When Xiao Yuling received the news from Xiao Chun, she smashed everything in her study. After such a long time, she finally received news about Lu Miaoqiu. However, this news made Xiao Yuling so angry that she wanted to kill someone. Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu had guessed wrong. They had guessed wrong about this scheming man. Lu Miaoqiu once thought that it was impossible for Xiao Yuling to fall in love with someone. After all, in the process of Lu Miaoqiu and Xiao Yuling's relationship, the two of them were always scheming against each other. There seemed to be no feelings to speak of. When Xiao Yuling ascended the throne, Lu Miaoqiu still had some fantasies. However, after helping Xiao Yuling choose a concubine, she completely gave up. It had to be said that Lu Miaoqiu was incomparably responsible when helping Xiao Yuling choose concubines. Because Lu Miaoqiu was smart enough, she knew what kind of person Xiao Yuling, who had just ascended the throne, wanted. When Xiao Yuling was choosing concubines, she wanted to use the daughters of the officials to stabilize her position. Therefore, when Lu Miaoqiu was choosing concubines, the first person she considered was the person who could help Xiao Yuling the most. Obviously, Xiao Yuling was very satisfied. However, she did not expect that after Lu Miaoqiu helped Xiao Yuling choose a concubine, she planned a fire and disappeared for Xiao Yuling's world. It disappeared without a trace, leaving no trace behind. Xiao Chun still didn't understand why Jingyu wanted to hide Lu Miaoqiu's whereabouts. However, when Jingyu said that if he dared to take a concubine, she would definitely disappear from his world without a trace, Xiao Chen's heart suddenly trembled violently. He understood what Jingyu meant. Lu Miaoqiu had fallen in love with Xiao Yuling. Xiao Chen knew very well that Xiao Yuling would definitely take concubines, because the background of those concubines would make his throne even more stable. Xiao Yuling didn't care about this at all. He didn't care about feelings. He was just a chess piece. He naively thought that Lu Miaoqiu also thought the same. However, he forgot that although Lu Miaoqiu was good at scheming, she was still a woman. No woman would happily accept her husband having multiple concubines. Lu Miaoqiu was so proud that she would not allow it. This successfully caused Lu Miaoqiu and Xiao Yuling's thoughts to diverge. Lu Miaoqiu's departure had caught Xiao Yuling off guard. He had never thought that Lu Miaoqiu would leave him. Xiao Yuling could feel that Lu Miaoqiu was moved by him. She had clearly fallen in love with him. How could she pull away without hesitation? Indeed, a woman's heart was the most poisonous. Whether it was to others or to herself, she was so ruthless. Xiao Chun and Jingyu followed Shangwan Linglan and the others to Cebu. On the way, they heard the news from the palace. What did you just say? Jingyu's eyes were filled with shock as she looked at Xing Yi and said, You said that Xiao Yuling is personally going to war? Yes. Xing Yi slowly nodded and said, The emperor personally issued an imperial edict to launch a war against Cebu. He is personally going to war. Chapter 1543. Hiss. Jingyu sucked in a breath of cold air. She stared at Xing Yi and said, Xiao Yuling is really going to personally lead the troops in a battle? Is your information wrong? Jingyu looked at Xing Yi with a conflicted expression. It looks like I underestimated Lu Miaoqiu's influence. Xiao Chen slowly said, At first, I thought that the emperor would use the safest method to reconcile with the Cebu and negotiate terms. I didn't expect him to use the most direct and domineering method. Could it be that I was wrong? Or Miaoqiu was wrong? Jingyu furrowed her brows and said, Is Xiao Yuling really not scheming anything by doing this? Perhaps we will have to continue watching to find out. Xiao Chun slowly nodded in response. After Jingyu had dealt with Lu Miaoqiu and learned about Xiao Yuling from Lu Miaoqiu, Jingyu was extremely wary of Xiao Yuling. Now that she suddenly heard this news, the first thought that came to her mind was whether Xiao Yuling was scheming again. Or was she thinking about what was his motive for doing this? At the end of the day, Jingyu just didn't believe that a person who was always scheming would be so unhesitant for a woman. Jingyu and Xiao Chun continued towards the border of the Cebu. Xiao Chun and the others walked very slowly. To be more precise, Jingyu and Xiao Chun didn't want to walk fast. They were probably wondering if Xiao Yuling was just putting on an act or if he was serious. By the time Jing Yu and Xiao Chun arrived at the border of the Cebu, the battle had already begun. Xiao Chun and Jing Yu were the last to arrive. Jing Yu and Feng Lang had already arrived with their troops. By the time they arrived at the border of the Cebu, War 7 had already begun. In the city, Jing Yu only saw Xiao Yuling after such a long time. When she saw Xiao Yuling, she immediately frowned. Why did Jing Yu suddenly feel hungry? This time, Xiao Yuling seemed to have lost a lot of weight. Ninth Emperor's, Ninth Imperial Aunt, congratulations on having a son. Xiao Yuling politely congratulated Xiao Chun and Jing Yu. Many thanks, Your Majesty. Xiao Chun nodded slightly to express his thanks. What is the current situation? Why did Your Majesty suddenly personally lead the troops in a battle? Jing Yu frowned as she looked at Xiao Yuling and asked, with the current situation, based on Your Majesty's previous personality, shouldn't you first negotiate? Dragons have reverse scales. Ninth Imperial Aunt, have you heard of this before? Xiao Yuling heard Jing Yu's words and smiled faintly. Jing Yu was slightly stunned when she heard this. She frowned slightly as she looked at Xiao Yuling's smile. Seeing Xiao Yuling's serious expression, it really made Jing Yu extremely suspicious. Was this fellow speaking the truth or not? Why did Jing Yu have a feeling that this was untrustworthy? What does Your Majesty plan to do next? Xiao Chun looked at the two from the side and frowned slightly as he asked. Wait. Xiao Yuling took a deep breath and said, this time, the flames of war were instigated by us. Now, we will see if Wei Ling will accept the challenge or not. Wei Ling still hasn't responded? Jing Yu frowned slightly when she heard Xiao Yuling's words. Yes, Wei Ling still hasn't responded. Right now, we will force the people of Western Zhejiang to respond. Xiao Yuling's eyes were filled with coldness as she said, if Wei Ling doesn't respond, then we will lead the troops in a Cebu Imperial City. Chapter 1544. Xiao Yuling's words were filled with coldness. When Jing Yu heard Xiao Yuling's words, her eyes widened slightly. Looking at Xiao Yuling's appearance, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. This Xiao Yuling was much more pleasing to the eye. All right, isn't it just a Cebu? Jing Yu smiled coldly. She looked at Xiao Yuling and said, however, I really want to know what Miaochio's situation is right now. Have you seen her? Not yet. Xiao Yuling sighed deeply and said, this is also what I am worried about. If Wan uses Miaochio to threaten you, what will you do? When Jing Yu's words fell, Xiao Yuling's expression changed. She pursed her lips and said, Ninth Aunt, are you trying to force me to choose between the throne and the Empress? Jing Yu raised her eyebrows indifferently. There was no emotion in her eyes. She looked at Xiao Yuling indifferently and did not speak. Before I answer this question, I would like to ask Ninth Aunt a question. Xiao Yuling was silent for a moment. Then, she looked at Jing Yu and said, go ahead. Jing Yu calmly nodded her head as she looked at Xiao Yuling. When the Empress went missing, was Ninth Aunt an educated youth from the start? Xiao Yuling asked as she stared at Jing Yu. The scrutiny in her eyes was very serious. She looked at Jing Yu with a heavy gaze. Yes. Jing Yu also looked at Xiao Yuling. Her golden-green eyes were filled with darkness. I understand. Xiao Yuling's face was originally tense. After hearing Jing Yu's calm answer, her eyes were filled with a bitter smile. She looked at Jing Yu and sighed deeply. Her handsome face was filled with pain. I've missed it once. I can't let it happen again. Xiao Yuling slowly lifted her eyes and looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Chun as she said, in the past, I didn't understand why the 9 emperors would go to such lengths for an insignificant woman. Now I understand. As Xiao Yuling spoke, she looked at Xiao Chun and smiled faintly. In this world, there is really someone who is willing to make me give up everything, including the throne that I've always yearned for. What's the point of having the world without her company? As Xiao Yuling's words fell, Jing Yu's heart trembled violently. She took a deep breath and slowly nodded her head. Xiao Yuling, I will remember what you said today. Jing Yu faintly smiled. She stood up and said, let's wait and see. I really want to see what methods this Wan has. If Miaochio is injured in the slightest, I will definitely tear this bastard into pieces. I will make him wish he was dead. Xiao Yuling coldly curled the corner of her lips. In the following days, Jingyu didn't seem to have anything to do. Jingyu peacefully took care of the children in the city, while Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling led a large group of people to battle. Jingyu was also happy to be free. Recently, Qingge was also very bored, so he came to accompany Jingyu. Shangguan Linglan really belonged on the battlefield. On the battlefield, he was all-powerful. Xiao Yuling was dumbfounded. She already knew that Shangguan Linglan was strong, but she didn't expect that when she saw it with her own eyes, he was even more powerful. It was simply incomparably shocking. When Xiao Yuling saw Shangguan Linglan's glory on the battlefield, she instantly had the desire to recruit him. However, how could Shangguan Linglan be recruited so easily? He didn't even give a damn about Xiao Yuling. Chapter 1545. In Shangguan Linglan's words, the emperor couldn't even protect his own woman. How could he expect her, Shanghai Linglan, to serve him as her master? That was simply a dream. When Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's words, she could almost feel the shadow in Xiao Yuling's heart. Shangguan Linglan was a citizen of the Tokyo, but he didn't care about the emperor of his own country. If word got out, it would be a joke. However, Xiao Yuling couldn't accuse Shangguan Linglan of being a traitor. If he did, wouldn't he be implicating the 9 emperors and Jingyu as well? If Lu Miaoqiu was here and found out that her good sister was being accused of being a traitor, wouldn't she fight Xiao Yuling to the death? The situation was getting more and more tense. Sibu didn't show any signs of taking the initiative. He was just standing guard. Xiao Yuling wasn't in a hurry either. He was slowly wading like a frog in warm water. Jingyu couldn't help but admire Xiao Yuling's perseverance. He was really able to endure. If it was Jingyu, she wouldn't be able to endure it. She would definitely go up and fight without a second thought. Fortunately, this wasn't Jingyu. This was because Jingyu was worried sick about Little Potato. Ninth sister-in-law, Little Potato peed on me again. Jingyu was already annoyed enough. With the addition of Qingge, she was even more annoyed. This man really made Jingyu feel very conflicted. Ninth sister-in-law, what should we do? Qingge said to Jingyu with a conflicted expression as he carried the laughing Little Potato. Didn't I tell you to let him pee first before you carry him? Are you stupid? Jingyu was about to explode. She walked to the courtyard and took the diaper from the rope. She changed Little Potato's diaper again and again. Didn't I forget? Qingge wanted to cry, but had no tears. He looked at Jingyu and said, Ninth sister-in-law, this is my last set of clothes. Then don't wear it. You deserve it. Jingyu glared at Qingge and said, Ninth sister-in-law, you can't do this. Qingge said with a wronged expression. Back then, yes, when I was pregnant, you were the one who personally diagnosed me. Jingyu said before she turned to Qingge and said. She turned to look at Qingge and said, Aren't you tired of saying these words? Qingge felt even more wronged after hearing Jingyu's words. Why are you still standing there? Go and change your clothes. Go and see if Xiao Chan has any clothes to wear. Jingyu glared at Qingge and said, Oh, okay. Qingji's eyes lit up in surprise. He nodded and ran into the room. Jingyu looked at Qingge and felt like she had another son. Did this guy really grow up? Why did Jingyu feel like she had to worry about everything? Just as Jingyu was carrying Little Potato and wandering around the courtyard, talking to Little Potato, Interrogation Officer 1's figure instantly rushed in. Jingyu was slightly stunned when she saw Interrogation Officer 1's figure. What's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry? Jingyu frowned and asked Xing-yi. Madam, the Empress is here. Xing-yi didn't waste any time and said to Jingyu. What? Miaoqiu is here. Are you all right? Jingyu asked with a hint of surprise in her eyes. Chapter 1546. Something is wrong. Xing-yi sighed deeply and said, The Empress, she is in danger. What did you say? When Jingyu heard Interrogation Officer 1's words, she was so shocked that her legs turned to jelly, and she almost knelt down. Her eyes were filled with astonishment, and the calm expression on her face instantly shattered. Qingge, take good care of Little Potato. Let's go. Jingyu didn't even think as she placed Little Potato in Qing Ji's hands. Her lips trembled slightly. Before Qing Ge could react, Jingyu had already left with Xing Yi. I. Qing Ge carried Little Potato and looked at Jingyu running away. He suddenly felt a wave of anger. Whose child was this? How could she just leave him in his hands so casually? Qing Ge lowered his head slightly and looked at the little guy in his embrace who was staring at him. A faint look of fondness appeared in his eyes. This little guy was really too cute. Qing Ge was playing happily with Little Potato in the courtyard. On the other side, the situation on the battlefield was on the verge of erupting. Today, Xiao Yuling's patience had really run out. She followed Xiao Chun and charged to the city gates of Cebu. They looked like they were about to take down the city gates. However, just as Xiao Yuling was about to give the order, she saw a person being pushed up the city walls. She was dressed in a plain white robe, and her slender figure was so petite. When Jingyu arrived, she saw that Lu Miaoqiu had been forced into a metal cage. The cage was suspended by a rope, and the other end of the rope was in Wei Yan's hands. That damn Wei Yan! Jingyu took a deep breath and frowned as she looked at the situation in front of her. Xiao Yuling, if you dare to take even half a step forward, I'll throw this woman down. Wei Yan's eyes were filled with madness. He was probably forced into a corner and knew that he couldn't hold on any longer. This was because from the beginning to the end, Wei Ling had not shown any signs of supporting or stopping this battle. He had been watching this battle with the same attitude, turning a blind eye to it. Wei Yan. Xiao Yuling looked at the situation in front of her, and her heart trembled violently. She shouted angrily, "If you have something to say it to me. Don't be rash." Ha ha ha. Xiao Yuling, you're scared. When Wei Yan heard Xiao Yuling's words, a flash of light appeared in his eyes, as if he thought of something. He stared at Xiao Yuling and said, "This woman is really useful." Xiao Yuling. Just as Wei Yan was speaking, Jing had already walked to Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling's side. She carefully observed the situation in front of her and frowned. She turned to Xiao Yuling and said, "You think of a way. Wei Yan will talk and attract his attention. I will think of a way to save Miaoqiu." Okay. When Xiao Yuling heard Jing Yu's words, her expression changed slightly. She pondered for a moment and slowly nodded in agreement to Jing Yu's words. "Xiao Chun, help me block him." Jing Yu said to Xiao Chun and hid behind him. She waved at Xiao Bai and said, "Xiao Bai, come here. I have something for you to do." Yes. Xiao Bai hurried to Jing Yu's side. The two of them used Xiao Chun and the soldiers as cover and squatted down. Chapter 1547. Haha, Wei Yan, aren't you too naive? On the other side, Xiao Yuling was indeed following Jing Yu's instructions and talking to Wei Yan. In order to stall for time as much as possible, Xiao Yuling's speech speed had slowed down. Every time Xiao Yuling spoke, she would deliberately pause for a moment. This sounded unhurried, but no one knew that this was Xiao Yuling's way of stalling for time. What makes you think that I, Xiao Yuling, will give up because of a woman? Xiao Yuling's eyes were filled with disdain as she looked at Wei Yan. There are many women, but there is only one throne. Wei Yan, do you really think that I will stop fighting because of a woman? Xiao Yuling, you don't need to put on an act here. Wei Yan heard Xiao Yuling's words and said proudly, "If it wasn't for this woman, you would have already broken in." Xiao Yuling seemed to have heard something funny. She faintly curled her lips and said, "This woman is my empress after all. I still need to act like this. But Wei Yan, since you want me to break in so badly, wouldn't it be too disappointing if I don't satisfy you?" Xiao Yuling looked at Wei Yan and said, "Archers, prepare." Wei Yan saw that Xiao Yuling was going to do whatever she said, and his eyes were filled with panic. He swallowed his saliva and said, "I won't be scared by your fake skills." Swoosh! Just as Wei Yan's words fell, this wave of archers actually released their arrows. The arrows looked like they were accidentally shot out, but it also looked like they were deliberately shot out. It flew straight towards Wei Yan and pierced into the ground in front of him. Wei Yan was shocked, and the rope in his hand loosened. The cage holding Lu Miaoqiu suddenly fell down by half a centimeter. Xiao Yuling's heart suddenly tightened, and the sword in her hand tightened. However, Her expression didn't change at all. It was as if she didn't feel anything at all. Xiao Yuling, this is your woman. Are you really so cold-blooded that you want to watch this woman die? Wei Yan was thoroughly frightened. His hands that were tightly gripping the rope were trembling. Lu Miaoqiu, who was in the iron cage, watched all of this silently. It seemed that no fear could be seen on her face or in her eyes. Wei Yan, this consort has already told you that this move is useless against him. Lu Miaoqiu looked at Wei Yan indifferently and said, he even schemed against his own father. An insignificant woman like me is just a chess piece that helped him ascend the throne. Otherwise, do you think Xiao Yuling doesn't know that I'm in the Northern Pastoral? He just felt that I was useless, so he threw me away. Lu Miaoqiu said. The look in her eyes was so real that there was even a hint of sadness. Impossible. Don't even think about lying to me. Wei Yan stared at Lu Miaoqiu and angrily rebuked. Shut up. Huh. Lu Miaoqiu faintly moved her body and said, I didn't want to live for a long time. If you want to kill me, then be a little more straightforward. After locking me up for so long, you think you can use me like this? Lu Miaoqiu's words infuriated Wei Yan. His heart was filled with unwillingness. Could it be that everything he did was in vain? Chapter 1548. How could Wei Yan be willing to lose just like that? Lu Miaoqiu was originally Wei Yan's last trump card. However, from the looks of it, Lu Miaoqiu was a completely useless chess piece. Looking at Xiao Yuling's appearance, it was clear that she didn't care about Lu Miaoqiu at all. Otherwise, why would she shoot that arrow? If he hadn't reacted fast enough, that arrow would have directly killed Lu Miaoqiu. Archers, get ready. Just as Wei Yan was thinking about what to do next, Xiao Yuling once again shouted from below. Wei Yan's heart suddenly panicked. Xiao Yuling, stop. Let's talk. Wei Yan said in a panic. That slight movement of taking a step forward completely exposed his entire body in front of Jingyu and Xiao Bai. Now, shoot the arrows. The moment Jingyu saw Wei Yan's body appear, the 4 arrows that she had been waiting for a long time rushed out with a strong wind. Chi. 1 arrow directly penetrated Wei Yan's throat. 1 arrow directly penetrated Wei Yan's arm, and the other 2 arrows directly fixed the 2 iron rings on the side of the iron cage the moment it fell. However, these fixed rings couldn't stop the iron cage from falling. They could only serve as a buffer. When everyone saw this scene, their hearts were in their throats. However, Jingyu and Xiao Bai were so calm that it was somewhat frightening. The arrows in the 2 men's hands did not seem to have any pause as they continuously shot out arrows. Everyone could see dozens of arrows continuously passing through the iron ring without any pause. Every arrow was shot with recognized accuracy. He watched as the iron cage fell to the ground. It seemed like a long time had passed, but in fact, it happened in an instant. The iron cage made a loud noise and fell to the ground. As for Jingyu and Xiao Bai, they had used up all of their arrows. The moment she saw the iron cage fall, Jingyu's hands went limp. She almost couldn't take out the bow in her hand. She swallowed slightly and turned to look at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai, this little guy, also raised his hand to wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. Just a moment ago, there was still a slight deviation in the arrow. If either of the 2 of them had a situation where they didn't relay the arrow, Lu Miaoqiu would very likely have fallen her death. So, how big was the bet between Jingyu and Xiao Bai? How high was the level of their archery? The moment Xiao Yuling saw Lu Miaoqiu fall to the ground, she immediately rushed over. Her frantic appearance caused a faint smile to appear in Jingyu's eyes. When she tilted her head slightly to look at her, the expression in her eyes was so clear and distinct. Xiao Bai, thank you. Jingyu turned to look at Xiao Bai and said these words very solemnly. Mother, I should be the one thanking you. Xiao Bai looked up at Jingyu and said, in the past, I never thought that I would have a day like this. Silly child. Jingyu raised her hand and patted Xiao Bai's head. Xiao Chun strode in front of Jingyu. He looked at Jingyu and then turned to look at Xiao Bai. He slowly let out a sigh of relief and looked at Jingyu as he said, You are really too bold. Cough, cough. Jingyu saw the dissatisfaction on Xiao Chen's face and silently raised her hand to touch the tip of her nose. She said, "I know what I'm doing." Chapter 1549. I'll go see if Miaoqiu is all right, Jingyu said as she ran forward. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. On the other side, Xiao Chan led the army into Cebu and captured all the Cebu soldiers. Anyone who resisted was killed on the spot. The end of a war meant the surrender of a country. The Tokyo's strength was unstoppable. Xiao Yuling was truly enraged and gave the Cebu an order to surrender. If the Cebu refused, Xiao Yuling soldiers would not hesitate to invade the Cebu's borders and kill their way into the imperial city. The Cebu would then be declared dead. Wei Ling had no other choice. In this war, the Tokyo grew stronger and the Cebu became a subordinate country of the Tokyo. How is Miaoqiu? After returning to the Tokyo's city, the first thing Jingyu did was to ask Qinggu to check Lu Miaoqiu's body. After confirming that Lu Miaoqiu was not mistreated, she heaved a sigh of relief. I also wanted to say that if this Weian did anything bad to you, I would have dragged his corpse here and whipped it. Jingyu saw that Lu Miaoqiu was safe and sound and immediately let out a sigh of relief. Really? When Lu Miaoqiu heard Jingyu's words, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She opened her mouth and said, "No matter how capable Weian is, he wouldn't dare to make a move against me without any help. You should know that. I am very useful." There was a faint smile in Lu Miaoqiu's eyes. When Jingyu heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, the corners of her mouth slowly curled up. She pursed her lips and said, "I knew it. With your head, everything will be fine." "Of course." Lu Miaoqiu raised her eyebrows and smiled. She said, "Weian walked the path of no return from the start. I didn't expect that he would be so stupid." "You brat. It's a good thing that Weian was stupid enough. Otherwise, this lady would have to collect your corpse." Jingyu stared fiercely at Lu Miaoqiu and said, "I knew that you would come to save me." Lu Miaoqiu did not seem worried at all as she smiled at Jingyu. "You're wrong this time." Jingyu heard Lu Miaoqiu's words and shook her head indifferently. She said, "The person who saved you this time was not me. If it wasn't for Xiao Yuling personally leading a large group of people into the Cebu, how could I have saved you?" Lu Miaoqiu heard Jingyu mention Xiao Yuling and her expression froze for a few minutes. She smiled faintly and said, "Yeah, are you going to speak up for Xiao Yuling in the next sentence?" "Eh." Hearing Lu Miaoqiu's words, Jingyu silently raised her hand to touch her chin and said, "You're so smart. You must know the reason behind this, right? This Xiao Yuling is not as scheming as you think." Yeah. You don't understand him." Lu Miaoqiu lowered her head and said, "If it wasn't for the certainty of victory, do you think Xiao Yuling would really send troops?" "Miaoqiu." Jingyu heard Lu Miaoqiu's words and frowned slightly. "Yeah, you don't need to say any more." Lu Miaoqiu looked at Jingyu's hesitant expression and lowered her head. She said, "I know what I want to do. I don't care about Xiao Yuling's schemes. Don't worry." Chapter 1550. Jingyu looked at Lu Miaoqiu's expression and lowered her head. She pursed her lips and said, "To be honest, I hope that you can talk to him more. Just like how you talk to me. Talk calmly without thinking too much. Lastly, Miaoqiu, I suddenly want to believe that Xiao Yuling can give you happiness." Jingyu stood up and looked at Lu Miaoqiu. She said, "Rest well. I'll come and see you later." "Oh, okay." Not long after Jingyu left, Xiao Yuling came over after she had finished dealing with the situation of the war. It was unknown what kind of mood Lu Miaoqiu was in, as she just sat there quietly. Not long after Jingyu left, Xiao Yuling came over after she had finished dealing with the situation of the war. Jingyu also returned to her courtyard. Little Potato had fallen asleep. Jingyu went to check on Little Potato and felt relieved. She turned around and laid down on the couch. Lu Miaoqiu had returned safely. Everything was fine. "Xiao Chun, you're back." Just as Jingyu was resting on the soft couch, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned her head slightly and saw Xiao Chun walking in. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she raised her head and called out. Uh-huh, Xiao Chun responded and walked to Jing Yu's side. He asked, how are you? Are you tired? Yes. Jing Yu looked up at Xiao Chun and said, my hands are still weak. Jing Yu pouted. Her expression made Jing Yu smile. I thought you weren't afraid of anything. When Xiao Chun heard Jing Yu's words, his eyes were full of smiles. He walked up and sat beside Jing Yu. He raised his hand and gently rubbed Jing Yu's arm. Oomph. Jing Yu glared at Xiao Chun with dissatisfaction. She smiled and said, I just didn't expect that Xiao Bai, who I thought would be afraid of, would perform so well when it came to showing off. You can't even beat a child. Xiao Chun was silent for a moment before he said this. Jing Yu's face immediately darkened. Hey, Xiao Chun, are you looking down on me? Jing Yu immediately shook off Xiao Chun's hand. She looked at Xiao Chun with displeasure and said, sure enough, you're right. After giving birth to a man's child, he's still unscrupulously disgusted with me. Xiao Chun's face froze. Xiao Chun, I'm telling you, if you dare to treat me badly, I'll take Little Potato and run away from home. I'll let you play by yourself. Jing Yu glared at Xiao Chun fiercely. As soon as she said this, Xiao Chun's face changed. No, Xiao Chun's gloomy voice sounded. He reached out and grabbed Jing Yu's hand. He used so much force and looked so nervous that Jing Yu smiled faintly. Oomph. Jing Yu smiled proudly. She looked at Xiao Chun and said, if you treat me well, I won't leave. I'm hungry. I want to eat your porridge. Jing Yu blinked and smiled at Xiao Chun. Okay. After Xiao Chun heard Jing Yu's words, he smiled and replied gently. Then, he really went to cook the porridge. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chun's back as he left. Her eyes were filled with satisfaction. She reached out for the tea and snacks on the side and casually ate them. Finally, everything was fine. Now, she could have a moment of peace. Chapter 1551. Lu Miaoqiu returned safely. For the past few days, Jing Yu had been with Lu Miaoqiu. However, Jing Yu discovered a problem. There seemed to be a barrier between Lu Miaoqiu and Xiao Yuling. There was still a barrier in their hearts that they could not cross. Jing Yu also expressed her helplessness in this regard. After the army rested for 5 to 6 days, it was finally announced that they were returning victorious. They brought the Empress back to the palace with victory. Miaoqiu, why do you still look so unhappy? On the way back to the city, Jing Yu looked at Lu Miaoqiu, who was sitting on the grass in a daze. She frowned and looked at Lu Miaoqiu with a worried expression. Yeah. Lu Miaoqiu saw Jing Yu approaching and smiled gently. What's wrong? Do you still not want to be the Empress? Jing Yu looked at Lu Miaoqiu and asked, I don't know if what I'm doing is right. Lu Miaoqiu sighed deeply and turned her head slightly to look at Xiao Yuling. Xiao Yuling was talking to Xiao Chun, and Qinggu was playing with Little Potato on the grass. Whether it's right or wrong, if you think it's right, then it's right. If you think it's wrong, then it might be right in the eyes of others. When Jing Yu heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, she smiled faintly and said, Miaoqiu, when did you become so careful? When Jing Yu finished speaking, Lu Miaoqiu was silent for a moment. Then, as if she thought of something, she laughed out loud. She turned to look at Jing Yu and said, Yeah, I finally know why Ning Xiangyan envies you so much. Jing Yu was seriously enlightening Lu Miaoqiu. How did the topic change to Ning Xiangyuan in the blink of an eye? It would be great if I had your tenacity. Lu Miaoqiu smiled at Jing Yu and said, What are your plans next? Just Ning turned to look into the distance and said, I want to take Little Potato to Roman Forest to see my parents. It's time to go. When Lu Miaoqiu heard Jing Yu's words, she turned to look at Jing Yu. Looking at Jing Yu's calm face, she sighed deeply in her heart. She never thought that so many things would happen in the blink of an eye. So many years had passed. Looking back at everything that had happened over the years, she didn't feel relieved at this moment. Instead, she felt even heavier. Lu Miaoqiu still remembered that when she heard that Jing Yu's father was killed and Jing Yu's abnormal pupils were exposed, she knew that the sky had fallen. Even now, when she thought of those scenes, she still felt her heart tremble. I've kept my promise back then. Jing Yu slowly curled her lips and said, Now that things have finally come to an end, I'm going to take the child to the Roman forest and personally engrave Father's tombstone so that Father can rest in peace in the underworld. Yeah. Lu Miaoqiu reached out and placed her hand on Jingyu's back. Jingyu turned to look at Lu Miaoqiu. I'm fine. I'm very happy. Jingyu smiled at Lu Miaoqiu. It was so dazzling and moving. As Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu were talking, Qinggu walked over with Little Potato. When Little Potato saw Jingyu, he immediately started babbling and reaching out his hands, asking for a hug from Jingyu. Chapter 1552. Little Potato, did you miss Mommy? Jingyu hugged Little Potato and asked happily. Ninth sister-in-law, Little Potato, is too naughty. He almost put the grass in his mouth. Qinggu looked at Jingyu with a conflicted expression. Really? Jingyu glared at Little Potato and said, Don't you know that it's dirty? Of all things to eat, why eat grass? If you want to eat meat, understand? Eating meat can make you grow faster. You can't eat grass. Qinggu and Lu Miaoqiu frowned when they heard Jingyu's serious lecture. How could she educate her child like this? Lu Miaoqiu and Jingyu were playing with the little guy in their arms when they suddenly saw a figure walking over. It was Shangwan Linglan. Jingyu knew that Shangwan Linglan was about to explode again when she saw his angry expression. You guys, you're all resting here. How could you forget about me? Shangwan Linglan glared at Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu angrily. We're just watching Miss Shangwan reorganize the troops. How could we dare to disturb her? There was a faint smile in Jingyu's eyes as she looked at Shangwan Linglan and said in a serious tone, That's right, Great General Shangwan is too busy. Lu Miaoqiu also said with a smile. You too. Shangwan Linglan's mouth twitched. He glared at Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu and said, It's all your fault. How could you not understand that I'm a woman? How could you make me do such menial work? Uff. Lu Miaoqiu laughed out loud when she heard this. She looked at Shangwan Linglan's armored appearance and said, In the past, I always felt that no matter what Linglan wore, it didn't fit him. Now that I see Linglan's riding attire, I realize that some people are born to wear armor. Lu Miaoqiu looked at Shangwan Linglan and sighed. That's right. Jingyu looked at Shangwan Linglan and said, Who would have thought that the three of us would become like this after so many years? One became a female general, one became a high and mighty empress, and the last one became a famous imperial concubine. Ha ha ha. When Jingyu said this, Shangwan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu both laughed out loud. The laughter attracted the attention of Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling, who were not far away. Seeing the three women sitting on the grass and smiling so happily, Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling's expressions softened a little. Imperial uncle, what are your plans? Xiao Yuling turned to look at Xiao Chun and asked. I don't know. Xiao Chun looked at Jingyu and said, As long as I am with her, it doesn't matter where I go or what I do. When Xiao Yuling heard Xiao Chun's words, she was slightly stunned. She turned to look at Lu Miaoqiu and her expression changed slightly. Your Majesty, what plans do you have? Xiao Chun looked at Xiao Yuling and said, Nanli has been destroyed and Cebu has become a vassal state. What plans do you have for the Northern Pastoral, Your Majesty? When Xiao Yuling heard Xiao Chen's words, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She said, What does Imperial Uncle think? Chapter 1553. If this was in the past, I would have thought that Your Majesty would take advantage of the Tokyo-esque strength to swallow up the northern pastoral lands and become the overlord of the world. Xiao Chen looked at Xiao Yuling and said calmly. When Xiao Yuling heard Xiao Chen's words, she nodded her head calmly. She did not deny Xiao Chen's words. However, I don't think so now. Xiao Chen's tone changed. He turned his head and looked at Xiao Yuling with his pitch-black eyes. Your Majesty, what joy is there in monopolizing the world? Ha ha. The only one who understands me is the ninth empress. When Xiao Yuling heard Xiao Chen's words, she immediately laughed out loud. The indifference in her eyes caused Xiao Chun to shake his head helplessly. It was very difficult to guess what this emperor was thinking. Xiao Yuling's plan was exactly as Xiao Chun had said. What did it mean to monopolize the world? This was the feeling of being in control. This was the feeling of being a ruler. What she wanted was to fight and kill each other. Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling chatted on the side. On the other side, Jingyu and Shangwan Linglan were also chatting happily. However, in this lively and peaceful moment, a big problem appeared. When Xing Yi appeared with anxious footsteps, Jingyu turned her head slightly to look at Xing Yi and frowned slightly. Xing Yi walked to Xiao Chen's side and said something. Jingyu clearly saw Xiao Chen's expression rapidly change. What's going on? When Lu Miaoqiu and Shangwan Linglan saw Jingyu's gaze, they turned their heads to Jingyu and asked in confusion. Something must have happened. Jingyu was also very puzzled. She frowned slightly and replied. When she saw Xiao Chun and Xing Yi walk closer, Jingyu and Shangwan Linglan stood up. Jingyu looked at Xing Yi's footsteps and frowned slightly. She thought carefully in her heart and still felt very puzzled. Wasn't this matter more or less resolved? Could it be that something had gone wrong? Xiao Chun slowly stood in front of Jingyu and said, "There's news of Bai Jiao." Really? Then what about Yi Shui? Jingyu had just died from laughter when she heard Xiao Chen's words. Her expression froze for a moment, and then her eyes widened in shock. She finally realized what she had forgotten. Bai Jiao is currently in a small town in the west. That area is Sibu's territory. Xiao Chun slowly said, "According to the news, only Bai Jiao's tracks have been found. It seems that Bai Jiao went to Gaogao City to find Yi Shui. Gaogao City is a very remote town in Sibu's territory. It's quite a distance from where we are now. We don't know Bai Jiao's purpose for going there, but if I'm not wrong, Bai Jiao must have found Yi Shui's tracks. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone to such a remote place." Jingyu's eyes flashed with a faint solemnity when Xiao Chun finished speaking. When Yi Shui was taken away by the musical aristocratic family, Jing had been sending people to investigate Yi Shui's whereabouts and the musical aristocratic family, but there was no result. White Jiao had started to investigate personally a long time ago. In the beginning, there were still traces of him, but he disappeared soon after. White Jiao disappeared without a trace. After such a long investigation, Jingyu almost gave up. Chapter 1554. She thought that Yi Shui and Bai Jiao wouldn't be able to find them. She didn't expect to receive such news after such a long time. Where is the exact location? Jingyu took a deep breath and looked at Xiao Chun and Xing Yi. "Get ready. We're heading to Taigao City." Xiao Chun frowned when he heard Jingyu's words. "Xiao Chun, this happened because of me. If there wasn't any news about Yi Shui, it would have been fine. But since there is news, I have to find her." Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun's frown. She seemed to know what Xiao Chun was thinking. She stared at Xiao Chun with her golden green eyes. "Okay." When Xiao Chun heard Jingyu's words, he was silent for a moment. Then, he responded faintly and turned to walk toward Xiao Yuling. "Jingyu, this is..." Shangwan Linglan frowned when he saw Xiao Chun leave. "You're going to Taigao City personally? What about Little Potato?" "I'll bring him along." Jingyu looked at Little Potato, who was playing happily with Qing not far away. She was silent for a while before she said, "I can protect him well. It's just that I can't go back to Dongqing with you this time." "How can that be?" Shangwan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu widened their eyes in shock when they heard Jingyu say that she would bring Little Potato along. They looked at Jingyu and said, "Little Potato is still so young. How can you bring him along? It's so dangerous." Jingyu wanted to say something. "No, you absolutely cannot bring Little Potato there." Lu Miaoqiu and Shangwan Linglan looked at Jingyu fiercely as they spoke. "But Little Potato hasn't been weaned yet. If I don't take care of him, how will he?" Jingyu said with a conflicted expression. Shangwan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu both frowned when they heard this. It seemed like they really couldn't leave Little Potato behind. "Why don't you get someone to investigate this matter first and find out what exactly is going on? Then, you can go after you're clear about this matter. What do you think?" Shangwan Linglan frowned slightly as he spoke. "No." Jingyu slowly frowned and said, "If we delay, I'm afraid something bad will happen." Jingyu sighed deeply as she looked at Little Potato in Qing Ji's arms. Her eyes were filled with a conflicted expression as she sighed deeply. Her brows were tightly knitted. She was obviously thinking about what to do next. Xiao Chen also frowned. Take Little Potato with you. Xiao Chan turned to look at Jingyu and said, if there are any changes, let Xing Yi and the others take Little Potato away first. Even if Little Potato returns to the Tokyo, if someone wants to make a move, there's nothing we can do to stop them. When Xiao Chun finished speaking, Shangwan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu both frowned. After thinking about it carefully, they felt that Xiao Chen's words were reasonable. However, for some reason, Shanghai Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu felt uneasy. After a few rounds of discussion, since Jingyu and Xiao Chan insisted on taking Little Potato with them, Shangwan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu had no choice but to let them go. Miaoqiu Linglan. On the main road, Jingyu and a group of people stood beside the carriages. Their eyes were filled with reluctance. Chapter 1555. You guys can go back to the Tokyo first. Jingyu looked at Lu Miaoqiu and Shangwan Linglan indifferently and said, once everything here is settled, I will bring Little Potato back to visit you guys. Right now, the Tokyo doesn't allow the two of you to follow me. Okay. Shangwan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu looked at each other and nodded slowly in agreement to Jingyu's words. Miaoqiu. Jingyu turned to look at Lu Miaoqiu and said, perhaps being the Empress of the Tokyo isn't a bad thing. As for you and Xiao Yuling, I believe you will be able to make your own judgment. Jingyu's lips curved into a faint smile. It was so warm and moving. As for Yu Linglan, Jingyu turned to look at Shangwan Linglan and said, Xiao Chun and I have discussed it. We have decided to let Xing Er leave the hidden guards and let him return to the Tokyo to marry you. As for how you guys will live after this, I don't care. What? When Shangwan Linglan heard Jingyu's words, his eyes widened in shock. He looked at Jingyu and said, Xiao Chun kicked Xing Er out of the hidden guards. Then Xing Er has already left for the Tokyo. As for Xing Er's identity, you will find out when you return to the Tokyo. Jingyu said as she winked at Shangwan Linglan. The teasing look in her eyes made Shangwan Linglan stunned. If Xing Er is gone, who will protect you guys? Shangwan Linglan looked at Jingyu and asked, Linglan, don't tell me you think that Xiao Chen only has two hidden guards, Xing Yi and Xing Er. Jingyu looked at Shangwan Linglan in amusement and said, don't worry, you don't have to worry about these things. Shangwan Linglan frowned in confusion. Lu Miaoqiu also smiled and said, the Ninth Emperor did this because he wanted Linglan and Xing Er to have a happy ending. Linglan, don't let down Jingyu and Ninth Imperial Uncle's good intentions. Lu Miaoqiu's lips curled up slightly as she looked at Shangwan Linglan. Aye. Shangwan Linglan's face instantly turned red when he heard this. His face was filled with shyness, but his slightly pursed lips were filled with joy. There's one more thing. Jingyu frowned again and looked at Shangwan Linglan. The Shangwan family is a family of generals. I hope that you guys can continue to protect the country. Xiao Yuling will be a good emperor. Jingyu said as she looked in Xiao Yuling's direction and said, I believe that your father will understand. Xiao Chun will not fight for the throne. He didn't in the past, and he won't now. He will just be an idle uncle. I knew you would say that. When Shangwan Linglan heard Jingyu's words, he sighed helplessly and said, I understand what you mean. Father will make the decision. That's good. Jingyu smiled and said, we are going to Taigao City. Let's part ways here. Okay. Shangwan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu looked deeply at Jingyu and said, Yeah, you must be careful. If anything happens, you must inform us immediately. Keep in touch. Lu Miaoqiu's eyes were filled with worry. I will. Jingyu nodded. After this farewell, Shangwan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu stood on the side of the road and watched Jingyu and Xiao Chen's group leave. For some reason, they felt very uneasy this time. However, this feeling of uneasiness was not very clear. Chapter 1556. Lu Miaoqiu and Shangwan Linglan watched as the carriages disappeared from their sight. Their eyes were filled with helplessness. I wonder when the world will be at peace. Lu Miaoqiu raised her head slightly and looked at the azure sky. Her pitch-black eyes were filled with a deep sense of helplessness. Looking at the sky, why did she have a feeling that the sky now was different from the sky in the past? Miaoqiu, let's go. Shangwan Linglan lowered his head slightly and looked at Lu Miaoqiu. Let's go. Lu Miaoqiu nodded slightly and turned to walk towards the carriage. Shangwan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu followed the rest of the carriages back to Tokyo. Jingyu and Xiao Chun went to Taigao City in the west. On the way back, Qinggu said that he wanted to go back to Miracle Physician Valley. He hadn't been back for a long time. Since they were so close to Miracle Physician Valley, he naturally wanted to go back and take a look. Jingyu and Xiao Chun naturally agreed to Qing Ji's request. The carriages didn't stop after Qinggu left. However, Jingyu was incomparably conflicted. When Qinggu was here, Jingyu despised him as much as she could. However, Jingyu missed Qinggu dearly when he suddenly left. It was great that Qinggu was here. He could help her take care of her child. Now that Qinggu was gone, Xingyi, you can't carry a child like this. You're suffocating my head. Jingyu was about to go crazy. She only asked Xingyi to help carry Little Potato for a while. Xingyi acted as if he was afraid that Little Potato would fall. The way he carried Little Potato made Jingyu's eyes twitch. Xingyi looked at Jingyu rushing over and anxiously carrying Little Potato away. He was instantly embarrassed. Madam, how could a grown man like me take care of a child? Xingyi looked aggrieved and sighed deeply. He suddenly admired Qinggu. How'd he take care of this child so well? Xiao Chun heard the commotion and walked over. He frowned slightly, as if he knew something. He looked at Xingyi and Jingyu and paused slightly. He reached out and took Little Potato from Jingyu's arms and stuffed him into Xingyi's arms again. Master, Xingyi carried Little Potato in a fluster and looked at Xiao Chun in shock. This king will teach you, Xiao Chun said seriously. He looked at Xingyi indifferently and said, You're going to be a father in the future. You'll have to learn this sooner or later. When Xingyi heard Xiao Chun's words, he was slightly taken aback. Then, he replied with a conflicted expression, Yes. Jingyu stood at the side and looked at this scene in shock. Then, she saw Xiao Chun's cold face teaching Xingyi how to take care of a child. The two men's expressions were extremely strange. Little Potato, on the other hand, was incomparably happy as the two of them hugged him. He seemed to like playing. Jingyu sighed helplessly and walked to the side to sit down. She looked at the two of them and smiled faintly as she ate. The afternoon sun brought some warmth. Time really passed quickly. In a few months, it would be winter. Jingyu looked up at the blue sky and sighed deeply. It's time to go. We have to get to the nearest town before it gets dark. Jingyu was staring at the sky in a daze when she suddenly heard Xiao Chun's words. She was startled for a moment, then the corners of her mouth slowly curled up and she said, Okay. Chapter 1557. Although the town was small, it was very lively. When Jingyu and the rest entered the town, the sun was setting in the west. Jingyu didn't want to attract too much attention, so she put on her veil to block the curious gazes of outsiders. Xiao Chun also put on a half mask to cover his face. When Jingyu saw Xiao Chun's actions, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, but she didn't say anything. After entering the town, Xiao Chun asked Xingyi to find a good place to stay. On the other side, Jingyu and Xiao Chun carried Little Potato as they walked on the lively streets. Looking at the lively people around them, they instantly felt very comfortable. Little Potato, what do you want to play? This was probably the first time this little guy was walking on the streets, so he was incomparably happy. His pitch-black eyes looked around as if he was curious about the various people around him. Xiao Chun carefully guarded Jingyu and Little Potato. Jingyu faintly curled the corners of her mouth and looked at Xiao Chun. When she saw Xiao Chun's actions, she said, Xiao Chun, there aren't many people here. You don't have to be so careful. When Xiao Chun heard this, he glanced at Jingyu and didn't say anything. He continued to protect them. When Jingyu saw Xiao Chun's actions, she felt warmth in her heart. Her eyes drifted over and saw the rattle drum on the stall. Her eyes lit up slightly. Little Potato, who was in her arms, also heard the sound of the drum. He tried his best to turn his head, as if he was curious about where the sound was coming from. Xiao Chun, go buy a small drum for Little Potato to play with. Jingyu looked up at Xiao Chun and said, okay. When Xiao Chun heard Jingyu's words, he was slightly taken aback. Then, he calmly agreed and asked Jingyu to wait at the side where there weren't many people. He walked over to the stall and said a few words to the stall. Then, he began to choose the rattle drum with a serious look on his face. Little Potato, look at how good your daddy is to you. Jingyu reached out to touch Little Potato's face and said with a smile. When she saw how happy Little Potato was in Jingyu's arms, Jingyu's eyes were filled with warmth. Jingyu stood there for a long time and realized that Xiao Chun was taking so long to buy something. When she turned her head slightly, she immediately knew what was going on. Xiao Chun was holding a rattle drum in his hand, and there was someone else standing in front of Jingyu. It was a lady wearing a lavender dress. She had a bashful smile on her face and seemed to be talking to Xiao Chun. Her frown and smile made Jingyu's face darken instantly. Jingyu didn't feel anything at first, but when she saw the way Xiao Chun was talking to her, she was instantly enraged. This damn man. She was still holding her child and waiting here, but this guy was actually seducing another woman. He must be tired of living. Jingyu's eyes were filled with anger. Just as she was about to walk over, she seemed to have thought of something. She frowned slightly, and the corners of her mouth curled into a faint smile. Then, she turned and walked into the crowd, completely ignoring Xiao Chun behind her. Not interested. When Xiao Chun heard the words of the beautiful lady, he coldly turned his head and walked in the direction of Jingyu. Hey, young master. When the lady saw that Xiao Chun was about to leave, she immediately became anxious. She took a step forward and raised her hand slightly to stroke her hair. Then, she said, if young master needs any help, you're welcome to look for me at any time. Chapter 1558. Xiao Chun frowned slightly. He glanced at the woman and turned to leave without saying anything else. This time, the woman didn't chase after him. She looked at Xiao Chun's back and smiled faintly. Xiao Chun only took a few steps before he discovered the problem. Jingyu and Laughing Potato, who were originally standing at the same spot, had disappeared. Xiao Chun's eyes narrowed and a hint of panic appeared in his eyes. He looked around anxiously, but he didn't see Jingyu. Xiao Chun quickly walked up to the stall and asked the stall owner. The madam who was standing here was carrying a child. Where did she go? Xiao Chun asked the stall owner. That madam? When the stall owner heard Xiao Chun's question, he thought for a moment and said, she was standing here just now. Just a while ago, I saw that madam walking toward the lake. Thank you. Xiao Chun frowned slightly and nodded in response. He turned around and walked towards the lake quickly. His hurried footsteps were very anxious. When Xiao Chun reached the lake, he saw the person standing by the lake. She was wearing a simple but elegant white dress and was holding a child in her arms. She was sitting by the lake and playing with the child. Xiao Chun's anxiousness and panic instantly disappeared when he saw Jingyu. His eyes were filled with relief. Jingyu seemed to have sensed something and turned to look in Xiao Chun's direction. She looked at Xiao Chun, who was walking over from the crowd, with an incomparably calm expression in her eyes. Oh, our ninth emperor is done talking to the lady? Jingyu glanced at Xiao Chun from the corner of her eyes. She smiled faintly and said, I thought that the ninth emperors would follow the lady home. Jingyu's strange words caused Xiao Chun's expression to stiffen. He looked at Jingyu's gaze and suddenly thought of something. He curled his lips and looked at Jingyu as he said, just now, she was no need to explain. Jingyu stood up and walked toward Xiao Chun. She took the rattle drum from Xiao Chun's hand and looked at Xiao Chun indifferently. She said, Little Potato, let's go. Jingyu's expression as she looked at Xiao Chun made Xiao Chun frown. He only had one thought in his mind. Something big had happened. What should he do now? Jingyu completely ignored Xiao Chun's expression and turned to walk away. She played with Little Potato in her arms. Xiao Chun hurriedly followed behind, but Jingyu didn't let Xiao Chun get close to her. She looked at him with disdain. Xiao Chun was really upset. What made Xiao Chun even more upset was that when they returned to the inn, Jingyu carried the child in and slammed the door shut. She directly shut Xiao Chun outside. Xing Yi's eyes widened when he saw this scene. What was going on? Master? Xing Yi looked at Xiao Chun and called out. This king will sleep in your room today. Xiao Chun was silent for a moment before he indifferently said this. He then turned and walked towards Xing Yi's room. When Xing Yi heard Xiao Chun's words, he was stunned for half a minute before he reacted. Seeing Xiao Chun enter his room, the corners of his mouth twitched speechlessly. Did this mean that he had to sleep on the roof today? He had no idea what his master and mistress were doing. Chapter 1559. Xiao Chun was given the cold shoulder the entire night, but Jingyu had a good night's sleep. This little guy was really obedient last night and didn't make a fuss. Jingyu finally had a good night's sleep and helped him put on his clothes early in the morning. Thinking of how Xiao Chun was given the cold shoulder yesterday, he should have learned his lesson, right? However, Jingyu didn't expect that when Jingyu walked down the stairs, she would see a beautiful lady sitting opposite Xiao Chun. Jingyu's expression changed instantly. How could she not be familiar with the lady sitting opposite Xiao Chun? Wasn't she the one who talked to Xiao Chun on the street yesterday? She really didn't expect that Xiao Chun would be able to trick a lady into following him. Madam, Xing Yi saw Jingyu the moment she walked down the stairs and hurriedly called out to her. When he called her Madam, Xiao Chun and the lady stopped and turned to look at her. This time, Jingyu finally saw the appearance of the lady in front of her. She was really young and beautiful. Jingyu pursed her lips and smiled. She calmly walked to the side and sat down. Then, she turned her eyes to the lady and asked curiously, "Who is this lady? Is this Madame Xiao?" When Jingyu was looking at the lady was also looking at Jingyu. She seemed to be curious about Jingyu. Then, she gracefully bowed to Jingyu and said, "I am Ling Xian, a friend of the 9 emperors." What? When Jingyu heard the lady's words, her eyes widened in shock. She turned to look at Xiao Chun with a questioning look in her eyes. "We've met once." Xiao Chun was silent for a moment before he replied calmly. "Oh." Jingyu's eyes were filled with doubt. She didn't say much and smiled at Ling Xian. She seemed to be very enthusiastic as she said, "So you're Xiao Chen's friend." "Excuse me. 9th Imperial Concubine, don't say that." I was rude. Ling Xian was very polite as she bowed slightly to Jingyu. Her smile was so gentle that even if Jingyu felt uncomfortable, she couldn't say anything. "Miss Ling Xian is from Cebu?" Jingyu asked casually as she stirred the porridge on the table. "Yes, I originally lived in Taigao City." Ling Xian said calmly. "I went out this time to play at my uncle's house. I didn't expect to meet the 9th Emperors. We spoke a little yesterday, and I was a little surprised that the 9th Emperors and the 9th Imperial Concubine would be here. So I asked around today. So the 9th Emperors and the 9th Imperial Concubine are going to Taigao City to find friends." Ling Xian's eyes were filled with a faint smile as she spoke calmly. "I've always been in Taigao City. I've always heard my cousin talk about the 9th Emperors and the 9th Imperial Concubine. I didn't expect to meet the legendary 9th Imperial Concubine today." Ling Xian smiled faintly, as if she was very happy. She looked at Jingyu as she spoke. "Miss Ling Xian's cousin is?" Jingyu was slightly taken aback. She raised her head and looked at Ling Xian in confusion. "Star Constellation Palace Master's protector, Ling Yong." Ling Xian's lips curled up slightly as she spoke calmly. Jingyu heard Ling Xian's words and instantly understood. No wonder Jingyu felt that Ling Xian's name was so familiar. She was Ling Yong's cousin. Chapter 1560. No wonder she was acquainted with Xiao Chun. After all, Xiao Chun was the sect leader of the Nether sect. The people of the pugilistic world would more or less have some connections with him. Jingyu smiled faintly and replied, "So you're Ling Yong's cousin. The 9th Emperors and the 9th Imperial Concubine are going to Taigao City to look for someone. Coincidentally, I'm going back to Taigao City as well. Why don't we travel together? Ling Xian smiled at Jingyu. When she said this, she turned her gaze to Xiao Chun. Jingyu raised her eyes slightly. When she saw Ling Xian's gaze on Xiao Chun, she instantly felt uncomfortable. How could a woman not understand another woman? Although Ling Xian hid it well, Jingyu could tell that Ling Xian had ulterior motives toward Xiao Chun. What made Jingyu angry was that Xiao Chun didn't take it seriously at all and even met Ling Xian's gaze. That's fine too. Xiao Chun thought for a moment, then nodded slowly and said, with Miss Ling around, it'll be easy to find someone in Taigao City. Jingyu's lips twitched. This damn Xiao Chun. Can't he tell that I don't like this woman? What do you think? After Xiao Chun answered, he turned his gaze to Jingyu and asked. Ling Xian was a little stunned when she heard Xiao Chun's question. She probably didn't expect Xiao Chun to ask Jingyu. Sure, I'll have a companion on the way. Jingyu smiled faintly and replied casually. However, she had already cursed Xiao Chun countless times in her heart. This pighead, you've already agreed to it. Why are you still asking me? Do you want me to reject you? Jingyu lowered her head angrily. When Ling Xian heard Jingyu's reply, she seemed to be very happy. She chatted with Jingyu, while Jingyu responded half-heartedly. Ling Xian probably sensed that Jingyu didn't want to talk to her. She seemed to be a little embarrassed, but she still behaved very well. Occasionally, she would talk to Xiao Chun, but the content of the conversation was very serious. Xiao Chun would also respond with a sentence or two from time to time. There was no special flattery, nor was there any coldness. They were just like ordinary friends. It had to be said that Ling Xian's method was really clever. This way, Xiao Chun wouldn't feel disgusted at all, and Jingyu wouldn't make things difficult for her. Anyway, every time Xiao Chun responded, Jingyu's face darkened. Then, Xiao Chun was beautifully recorded by Jingyu. How many days had he not been able to enter the room? Poor Xiao Chun didn't know what he did wrong. He thought that Jingyu was angry because of what happened that day. Originally, he thought that when Jingyu saw Ling Xian and knew that he didn't mess around, she wouldn't be angry. However, he didn't expect that Jingyu would be even angrier. Although Jingyu seemed to get along well with Ling Xian, the more Jingyu was like this, the more flustered Xiao Chun was. After walking for 2 or 3 days, Jingyu didn't say more than 10 words to him. Little Potato also didn't let him hug it. Xiao Chun was completely confused. He didn't know what he did wrong. Sister Ling Xian, come and sit here for a while. Jingyu was incomparably kind to Ling Xian. It even made Xiao Chun suspect that Jingyu had other thoughts. Ling Xian was also a little flattered. Originally, she thought that Jingyu was pretending, but she didn't expect Jingyu to be like this all the time. This made Ling Xian a little confused. What was the situation now? Was the 9th Imperial concubine not as powerful as the rumors said? Chapter 1561. Thank you, 9th Imperial concubine. Ling Xian lowered her head slightly and spoke politely to Jingyu. Little sister Ling Xian, there's no need to be so courteous. Since you're Xiao Chen's friend, then we're family. There's no need to be so polite, Jingyu said casually. After Jingyu finished speaking, Ling Xian's expression changed. Her eyes flickered with a faint light as she looked at Jingyu with a probing gaze. She didn't know if Jingyu was hinting at something, but Jingyu's expression didn't change at all. It was as if she was just casually saying those words. Thank you, big sister you. Ling Xian slowly smiled and sat down beside Jingyu. She looked at Little Potato in Jingyu's arms with a faint look of joy in her eyes. She said, Little Lord is so cute. He's so similar to the 9th Empress. That's right. When Jingyu heard this, she smiled and replied naturally. However, she hugged Little Potato a little tighter. The smile on her face was still there, but there was a hint of wariness in the depths of her eyes. Eat something. Xiao Chun walked forward and handed the fruit in his hand to Jingyu. Jingyu looked up at the fruit and was silent for a moment. She didn't seem to want to take it all. Ling Xian sat beside Jingyu and was stunned when she saw this scene. She looked at Xiao Chen's raised hand and then looked at Jingyu's hair. She smiled faintly and said, Big sister you, look at the fruit. It looks very sweet. Ling Xian took the fruit in Xiao Chen's hand and handed it to Jingyu. She said, "Could it be that big sister you doesn't want to eat it?" "That's right, I don't want to eat it. If little sister wants to eat it, then go ahead." Jingyu smiled faintly at Ling Xian as she spoke calmly. "The 9 emperors won't mind, right? Sister Yu said she doesn't really want to eat it." Ling Xian pursed her lips and turned to look at Xiao Chun. When Xiao Chun saw Jingyu's actions, his frown deepened. He didn't know what Jingyu was trying to do in this situation. Xiao Chun glanced at Ling Xian, turned around, and left without saying a word. That cold look of his caused Ling Xian's expression to change slightly. Jingyu watched this scene without saying a word. After Xing Er left, another secret guard appeared beside Xiao Chun. He was also dressed in black, and his name was Interrogation 15. He was ranked 15th. This 15 wasn't like Xing Er, who didn't like to talk much. On the contrary, this child was a chatterbox. "Boss, what do you think is going on between Master and Madam?" 15 looked at the way Jingyu and Xiao Chun interacted with each other. He frowned and looked sideways at Interrogation 1 as he asked, "What's the matter?" "I don't know." Xing Yi also frowned and thought for a moment before replying seriously. "Boss, were you and second brother also like this when you were with Master and Madam?" 15 asked again. "No." Interrogation Officer 1 answered quickly this time. Interrogation Officer 15 frowned when he heard that. His fingers touched his chin as if he was thinking about something very important. He said very seriously, "There must be something fishy about this. You're full of ideas. Why don't you see what's going on?" Xingyi obviously knew that there was something fishy going on, but even he didn't know what was going on. After hearing Interrogation 15's words, he calmly turned to look at Interrogation 15 and said, Chapter 1562. As for what's going on, I think we need to observe for a few more days, Interrogation 15 said as he turned to look at Xing Yi and said, "Boss, don't you agree?" "Stop spouting nonsense." Interrogation Officer 1 glared at Interrogation Officer 15 and said, "Go pack up, we're setting off." "Oh." 15th Interrogation Officer responded quietly and turned to leave. His pair of indifferent eyes looked at Ling Xian with a hint of probing, as if he had thought of something, but also as if he hadn't thought of anything. For the past few days of travel, Jingyu was still cold and indifferent. Who knew if it was because of Jingyu's cold attitude? Xiao Chun also became cold towards the end. Ling Xian and Xiao Chun spent more time together, and Xing Yi and Interrogation 15's frown deepened. On the lawn, Jingyu hugged Little Potato and played by the stream. On the other side, Xiao Chun and Ling Xian were talking. Ling Xian was talking enthusiastically, but Xiao Chun only responded casually, his eyes occasionally glancing at Jingyu. 9th Emperors. Rumor has it that the 9th Emperors and the 9th Imperial Concubine are very loving, and that the 9th Emperors only marry the 9th Imperial Concubine. I wonder if it's because the 9th Imperial Concubine doesn't want the 9th Emperors to take concubines? Ling Xian turned slightly to look at Xiao Chun and asked. Xiao Chun heard Ling Xian's words and frowned slightly. He said, "This is our family matter. What does it have to do with you?" 9th Emperors, don't misunderstand. Xianer was just casually asking. Ling Xian lowered her head and said, "If the 9 Emperors don't like it, Xiana won't ask in the future." Ling Xian was so well-educated. Xiao Chun turned his head slightly and looked at Ling Xian. His pitch-black eyes made Ling Xian's expression change slightly. However, before Ling Xian could figure out the meaning of Xiao Chen's gaze, Ling Xian's expression changed slightly. Xiao Chen turned his head and walked towards Jingyu. The way he strode towards her maid Xing Yi and Xing Shiwu, who were originally standing leisurely at the side, straightened their backs instantly. Looking at Jingyu and Xiao Chun, the atmosphere between them seemed to be filled with the smell of explosives. Was the pressure from the past few days about to explode? Ling Xian was also stunned by the situation in front of her. Seeing Xiao Chun standing in front of Jingyu, her heart skipped a beat. Such force. "Jingyu, what do you want?" Xiao Chun looked at Jingyu with an icy expression and asked, "What about me? Is the 9th Emperor's here to denounce me? Or do you want to say something to me?" Jingyu said with a faint smile as she hugged Little Potato and looked at Xiao Chun. Don't talk to me in such a weird way, Xiao Chun said to Jingyu with a very bad expression. Ninth Emperors, you're overthinking it. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun with a smile and said, I see that the Ninth Emperors likes Miss Ling Xian so much. You want to help the Ninth Emperors find a concubine. How can the Ninth Emperors only have me as his official concubine? Xiao Chen's expression changed when he heard Jingyu's words. His pitch-black eyes stared at Jingyu with anger, and he said coldly, Help this king find a concubine? Jingyu, say that again. Yes, I'm helping the Ninth Emperors find a concubine. Why? Does the Ninth Emperors not like it? I see that little sister Ling Xian likes it very much. Jingyu said as she slowly turned to look at Ling Xian with a smile. Ling Xian was stunned on the spot. She didn't expect Jingyu to say it so bluntly. Chapter 1563. Xiao Chun was stunned by Jingyu's words. Sister Yu. Ling Xian said anxiously after recovering from her momentary shock. Jingyu, you want me to take in a concubine? Xiao Chen's expression was extremely ugly. He glared at Jingyu as though he wanted to swallow Jingyu whole. Didn't the Ninth Emperors want to do this for a long time? I'm just helping the Ninth Emperors, Jingyu said calmly. Xing Yi and Xing Shiwu held their breaths when they heard Jingyu's words. They could feel Xiao Chen's violent emotions in that instant. Their hearts trembled violently, and they didn't dare to speak. Taking a concubine, right? All right, since you want this king to take in a concubine, then this king will take in one, Xiao Chun said coldly as he glared at Jingyu. What? Ling Xian didn't expect the situation to turn out like this. Her eyes widened in shock as she looked at Jingyu and Xiao Chun. Master, madam. When Xing Yi heard this, his eyes were instantly filled with astonishment. He hurriedly took a step forward, not knowing what to do with the situation before him. It was just a few words. How did this matter get brought up? Ha! Xiao Chun, I was wrong about you. Jingyu looked as though she had heard something terrifying when she heard Xiao Chen's reply. Her expression was icy as she turned to leave. Sister Yu. Ling Xian quickly stopped Jingyu when she saw that Jingyu was about to leave. Her eyes were filled with anxiety as she said, Sister Yu, don't be angry. The Ninth Emperors only said it out of anger. Isn't this what you've been waiting for? Why are you pretending now? Jingyu said coldly as she smiled at Ling Xian. Sister Yu, I didn't. As soon as Jingyu finished speaking, Ling Xian seemed to have suffered a huge blow. She looked at Jingyu with a choked voice and said, I never dared to have such thoughts. Although I really like the Ninth Emperors, but I never thought of marrying the Ninth Emperors. Sister Yu, I never thought of fighting with you. Xian's eyes were filled with sincerity as she looked at Jingyu. If Sister Yu doesn't like me, I'll leave. Ling Xian's eyes were filled with stubborn tears as she turned to leave. Jingyu looked at her and didn't say anything. Ling Xian really walked forward step by step. Jingyu looked at Ling Xian calmly. Normally, Jingyu would stop Ling Xian, but Jingyu didn't do so. Ling Xian's footsteps slowed down. Jingyu's lips curled into a mocking smile as she slowly narrowed her mouth. Sister Ling Xian, aren't you leaving? Why aren't you walking? Jingyu asked calmly when she saw Ling Xian stop in her tracks. Are you trying to say that even if you want to leave, you'll only leave when Xiao Chun says so? Jingyu looked at Ling Xian indifferently and said. The look in her eyes made Ling Xian's expression change. Ling Xian didn't know what to do next. Jingyu was like this for a while, and it made Ling Xian a little confused. Chapter 1564. Ling Xian opened her mouth slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Jingyu's laughter. You're really thinking about Xiao Chun. Jingyu looked at Ling Xian and said indifferently, Xiao Chun, do you believe me now? This woman approached you to break up our relationship, and then take advantage of the situation. Yes, madam is wise. Xiao Chun heard Jingyu's words and calmly raised his eyebrows. What? Ling Xian's eyes were filled with shock. She didn't know what was going on at all. You dare to play such little tricks in front of us? Jingyu looked at Ling Xian from the corner of her eyes and said, I was wondering how long you could hold it in and what powerful tricks you had up your sleeve. So this is what you're going to do? What do you mean by that? Ling Xian's expression changed instantly. She looked at Xiao Chun and Jingyu and raised her hand to tuck her hair behind her ear unnaturally. She said unnaturally, What are you talking about, big sister you? I don't understand. Stop pretending. Jingyu looked at Ling Xian with disdain and said, You want to steal my man with your looks? I only used a little trick and you can't wait to jump out. I thought you could hold it in for a while, but it seems like you're just so. You're playing with me. Ling Xian's expression instantly turned extremely ugly, and the gaze she used to look at Jingyu suddenly turned cold. Yes, we're playing with you. Jingyu said in all seriousness, How boring. We haven't played for long, and you can't wait to end the game. However, I'm very curious. Who exactly are you? I've never heard of you. Ling Yong has a cousin? Ling Xian's expression changed slightly. She looked at Jingyu and Xiao Qin's expressions and slowly straightened her body. As expected of the imperial concubine with different pupils, Ling Xian quietly looked at Jingyu and said, I thought my acting was already very good, but I didn't expect that I would still be found out. I'm really surprised. What do you want? Jingyu asked Ling Xian calmly. Haven't you already guessed what I want to do? Ling Xian looked at Jingyu calmly and said, If they really came here to fight for Xiao Chun, they wouldn't be like this after being exposed. Jingyu slowly curled her lips and said, If you say you don't have any other motives, I won't believe it. Ninth Imperial Concubine, you still dare to keep me by your side, even though you know that my intentions aren't pure. Are you really that confident? Or do you not take me seriously? Ling Xian looked at Jingyu with indifference. The way she looked at Xiao Chun also changed. Previously, Ling Xian looked at Xiao Chun with a scorching gaze, but now there was only coldness in her eyes when she looked at Xiao Chun. When Jingyu heard Ling Xian's words, she immediately frowned. Her heart trembled violently. She didn't know what she thought of, but she felt uneasy for a moment. What did you do? Jingyu stared at Ling Xian with her golden green eyes and asked, Naturally, I did what I've been doing all along. Ling Xian's eyes were filled with coldness as she said, You dared to touch my big brother Yunjing, so you have to pay the price. Ling Xian's eyes were filled with coldness as she spoke. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.